You did what I'm saying. If they all hollers, I'ma count it fast. Yeah, I wanted money, I couldn't enjoy class.
After mysteriously popping up and receiving cosigns from the likes of Drake, Weeknd and Kylie Jenner, Nav was thrusted into the expected route to mainstream success. He released great music, notched up millions of plays on SoundCloud, got cosigns and eventually signed to a label. And as comes with any newly hyped artist is a growing anticipation for their first project, and Nav was no different. Officially being revealed as self-titled and only 11 tracks long days before its release, this is very much a proving point for Nav. He is the whole world watching, backing from a label, a major standalone feature in Weeknd, and not to mention a proper commercial release. So with all this attention, how did he go? Well, enough talking and let's dive in. The project kicks off with Myself, which is actually a bit of a risk considering it's by far his most popular song, but it serves as a great opener for the project. As Nav slowly rolls down the curtains to his debut, we get an image of Nav cruising late night by himself, and the spacey, slightly somber mood this image entails is encapsulated by the intoxicating beat. I've listened to this song to death before this project, I love it, and it sets the stage well for the rest of the tape. And after this we get to Nav, which is probably the most brightest and upbeat we've heard Nav thus far. It's bouncy, uplifting even, and it feels like a celebration, a shredding of the person that he was before the music, and an embracement of Nav, the person who gets sneakers for free because he's a star, as he describes himself on the track. After listening to all of his previous material, I've come to expect the same tired subjects from Nav lyrically, and this project offers little to no development. Drugs, women, having money when you used to be broke, having access to killers, pretty standard stuff really. But as is with a lot of modern age rap, it really is more about the vibe and the melodies more so than the lyrics themselves. And if I tried to describe Nav's sound on a whole, it would be something like cleanly blunted, I think. The instrumentals are refined, leaning in that OVO-ish lane, and are heavily reverbed, giving off that hazy atmosphere. But this kind of approach can go a few ways, where someone like Travis Scott takes this refinement of his production to create large, grandiose canvases, or Future, who takes his druggy influence and makes it loud and banging with in-your-face production. Nav takes this approach but instead scales it down. The synths, pianos and bells sound very computer generated, even robotic at times, and this is similar to Nav's voice. It's pitch shifted, slightly auto-tuned and stays monotone for the most part. The combination of his robotic sounding voice and his robotic sounding production make it sound clean and clear cut. Nav simply floats on his production, and it makes his tracks really easy to listen to. His sound almost encapsulates and surrounds you, and it makes it soothing in a sense, as everything on the tracks melds so well together. Nothing on the production side is overly loud or attention grabbing, and nothing with what Nav is bringing vocally or lyrically is either. But these two aspects combine for that cleanly blunted vibe of his music I was talking about earlier, and it's a huge part of Nav's appeal for me. A common criticism I see around for Nav is the comfort he has within this OVO-ish sound. He doesn't really take that many risks lyrically or production wise, and that's the same on this project. Although I would have liked for him to change it up a little bit, I really didn't come into his debut tape expecting for him to completely reinvent the wheel. Instead, I expected him to revise his sound and deliver great quality tracks with a few cringeworthy lines here and there thrown in for good measure. Occasionally, however, Nav will deliver a potent insight into his life that adds some character behind his mysterious image. Good For It is a perfect example of this, another low-key banger with playful synths that make for a bouncy rhythm. And adding to this, Nav comments that he's trying to get his friend out the trap, but he can't build a house with only half a brick, which I thought was really clever. And further on in the song, we get him saying that if he wasn't successful in music, who else in the house would keep the lights on? Which I thought was another nice little line. And Nav completes his track with a winning chorus, helping to make Good For It a standout song. Skipping past Up, which has been released for a while and is probably my favourite Nav song to date, we get to the interlude, and this represents a shift in the tape, and it really starts to lose steam for me. Sleep really added nothing to the tape and was painfully average. Nothing on the track did anything for me. Not the beat, not the flow, which never really connected at any parts, or the hook. Overall, just a really lackluster song. And after this we get Maria, which wasn't bad, but it sounded far too much like a Drake song. If I had heard just the instrumental, I would have expected Drake to come in at any point. It sounds like that typical 40 sound. And Some Way, which was the first single released beforehand, I was so keen for. Considering The Weeknd is a big part to Nav's success and his story, I figured the two would come together for a huge track and really help finish off this project. And I guess it wasn't bad, but it was just a bit of a letdown. For starters, there was way too much Weeknd on the track. Like, it felt like Nav was an afterthought. And secondly, as Nav's introduction to Abel's millions of fans, you would think he would come a little bit better lyrically than "I think my nuts would look better on her face." Like, what the fuck? And to top it off, the production really felt uninspired and lacked any sort of punch. Their song has grown on me in terms of the album, but still doesn't really do much for me. And to close off the tape, we have another hit of Nav's in 10 Toes Down, and this was a great choice. He opened the project with Myself, which is almost like Nav revving up the engines to begin a late night cruise, and we as listeners are in the back of the car with him, whilst 10 Toes Down feels like him ending the journey he took us on throughout the night. On the second verse on this track, Nav speaks from the perspective of him already making it, and him seeing the change in his friends around him. The track ultimately feels like him saying, look, throughout all my success, I know I'm gonna stay true to myself, but I hope my friends and my family stay true as well. And it's a really nice closer to the project. Despite the rough patch towards the end of the tape, Nav still came through and delivered what I think he needed to do on his debut. He didn't reinvent himself or do anything entirely that different. Instead, he opted to take what he had done before, refine it, and add to his existing catalogue in that lane. If you were like me and were a Nav fan before this project, I see no reason why you won't like this. But if you weren't a fan of Nav before this, I don't see this project changing your opinion. But I give it a recommendation for anyone who hasn't really given Nav a chance. Looking past the repetitive lyrics, you'll find some great production that puts off some great vibes, perfect for any environment. And his melodic delivery all over his hooks and verses makes for some catchy tunes. All things considered, it gets a solid 7.5 from me. The weaker parts towards the end of the track list really stopped it from wowing me, but the newer tracks like Nav and Good For It really stood out, and I could see them being in my rotation for a while. Alright guys, that's all from me today. Thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you guys thought about this project. Did you like it, and what were your favourite songs? Please like, subscribe, and follow me on all social medias for more.